All right. Do you wanna welcome? Yeah, that's, hi Jim, good to see you.
Nice to see you guys too. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for asking me to be a part of your meeting today. I appreciate it.
Sure. So I just want to get a little bit of history. So for the board members, we had other vendors for disciplinary resources come before us previously in the year. And I think one meeting we ran out of time or something happened, so we wanted to reschedule and allow Jim to have some time with us and with affiliated monitors. So thank you, Jim, and take it away.
All right. Thank you very much. As Cassie mentioned, my name is Jim Anliot. I'm Director of Healthcare Compliance Services for Affiliated Monitors. And I'm an attorney by training, but have had some prior experience with professional licensing boards before I joined Affiliated Monitors in 2004. I had served as legal counsel to the Chiropractors Board in Massachusetts for about 16 years. And we created Affiliated Monitors in 2004 to try and fill a vacuum. We wanted to provide a source of neutral, independent, third-party monitoring services for state professional licensing boards. In my own experience in Massachusetts, we worked in an umbrella agency. Our staff served about 38 different professional licensing boards. We had a staff of maybe 25 investigators, possibly 10 or 12 attorneys. And we were handling between 2,000 and 2,500 consumer complaints a year. Obviously, we didn't have the resources to take every disciplinary case to a hearing. So we entered into a lot of settlement agreements with our licensees. And in those settlement agreements, we often required them to take certain corrective actions to fix the problems in their practice. The difficulty was that our investigative staff had neither the time and in some cases not the skill set either to be able to effectively evaluate whether those practitioners were meeting the requirements we had set for them. Our experience in that case does not appear to have been an isolated one. Over the last 19 years, we've seen a lot of state professional licensing boards across the country who experience great difficulty in trying to determine whether practitioners which have been placed on probation or who have entered into consent orders have in fact complied with the terms of those orders. And that's why we created Affiliated Monitors to provide a source of that independent, impartial practice monitoring service. We are also serving, I should mention, with increasing frequency as the independent review organization in program integrity agreements between healthcare providers and the Office of the Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, as well as between providers and state Medicaid agencies. So what do we do? Our objective in any given situation is to create a win-win situation for both the board and the licensee. We do this by trying to achieve two objectives simultaneously. First, we're trying to provide the board with a neutral, impartial assessment of the licensee's compliance with their disciplinary order and their progress in making the improvements the board expects in their practice. On the other side, we're providing the sanctioned licensee with an opportunity to remain in practice as long as they make sufficient progress towards correcting the problems in their operations and are meeting the board's public protection requirements. To achieve these objectives, we've realized that both parties, both the board and the licensee, need a process which has 5 major characteristics. First, it needs to be objective. Historically, when monitoring was used, it was often done by board members or board staff. And some boards tried using monitors who were identified by the licensee being disciplined. But a lot of the boards found that the results of those efforts were somewhat lacking in both objectivity and quality. When we allowed the licensee, for example, to select their own monitor, what oftentimes happened was we got a letter back, a report back that said, "Dear chairperson and members of the board, everything's going wonderfully here. We'll talk to you in 90 days. And that didn't provide us with much information about whether the licensee was making the progress they needed to be making. Second, the process has to be evidence-based and neutral. An effective and meaningful oversight process it requires the use of current practice standards and guidelines, not just a particular monitor's personal preferences about how a licensee should work. Third, the process needs to be consistent. Oversight works best if it applies practice standards and guidelines in a consistent manner from one round of monitoring to the next. The process also needs to be thorough. Effective oversight should meet the board's needs for a clear and complete understanding of what the licensee is doing well and what needs further remediation. And it's best for the licensee if that process includes some very specific, very concrete recommendations about how they can be better at what they do. Last, the monitor needs to be someone who is experienced. He has to have a sufficient level, he or she has to have a sufficient level of professional experience and expertise regarding the particular issues which are of concern to the board. Selecting a monitor with the right skill set is a very important key to success in this process. We serve a lot of different types of healthcare providers. Most of our work originally consisted of work for physicians and chiropractors, and that remains a major portion of our work now. But we have expanded our practice monitoring services to other professionals as well: dentists, pharmacies, physical therapists, podiatrists, clinical laboratories, even nursing homes. And we have provided practice monitoring services for a wide variety of people in a wide variety of specialty areas: neurology, orthopedics, etc. Types of cases we handle, we found that our practice monitoring services are particularly well suited for situations in which the principal issue before the board is poor clinical documentation of services or questionable coding and billing practices. Those two oftentimes run together, as I'm sure you're well aware. We've also found that monitoring works well in terms of guarding against improper patient referral practices, inappropriate prescribing of controlled substances, inadequate infection control or workplace safety practices, and improper delegation of patient care functions or inadequate supervision of mid-level assistance in the practice. We also have been able to create an effective chaperoning program to address situations in which there are boundary violations at work. And we have, over the recent years, included a certain amount of work in terms of measuring compliance with established treatment plans for practitioners who are impaired by drug or alcohol problems. We can't create or design the treatment programs for these individuals, but we can monitor them for compliance with those treatment plans once they're in place. How do we do this? For each case that we handle, we work with the board and the licensee to develop a practice monitoring program which will address the particular issues the board is most concerned about. To do this, it is helpful to us to know exactly what issues and what problem areas the board is particularly concerned about and that we need to address. A monitoring program can include any one or a combination of the following things. We do remote reviews of randomly selected patient treatment records for sufficiency of clinical documentation. We've found in our experience that a review of between 10 and 20 records per quarter is usually sufficient to provide a reliable assessment of what's going on in the practice, what's being done well, what's being done poorly. Increasing the sample size beyond that level does not typically increase the reliability of the results enough to justify the added expense that's involved. We can do reviews of coding and billing records to evaluate the appropriateness of the provider's billing practices and determine whether their documentation supports the codes that they're submitting to insurers. We do on-site practice evaluations for compliance with proper infection control and workplace safety practices. We have been limited in recent months to doing that because of the COVID epidemic, but now that seems to be subsiding, in large part, we're able to manage that again if that's needed. We can also do on-site direct observations of patient care. I should point out here by way of caveat that we are not able to place our monitors in a position where they have to intervene directly to protect the patient if something goes wrong. We're not able to provide professional malpractice insurance coverage for our monitors to be able to do that. But we can do observations of patient care procedures to determine whether, based on our observations, whether things are being performed appropriately. We provide, as I said, chaperoning programs in boundary violation cases. Typically, this is done through working with the licensee's own staff to provide a chaperone with each patient throughout each patient encounter. And we do interviews with office staff to verify operating procedures. Selection and approval of monitors, of course, is a very important step in this process. Our monitors are carefully selected to make sure that they have the appropriate level of experience and the specific skill set that's necessary for the monitoring process. Every reasonable effort is made to select a monitor who has particular expertise, maybe board certification, and if such a certification exists, for the areas that are under review. Our infection control reviews are performed by monitors with specific experience in training in infection control. In most cases, those individuals are actually registered nurses. All of our monitors are very carefully screened for potential conflicts of interest. We check to make sure that the monitor has no personal or business relationships, past, present, or promised future relationships with the licensee they're going to be monitoring. We also make sure that they have no prior involvement in the disciplinary case before the board as a member of the board or as an expert witness. All monitors are also required to comply with a specific code of ethical conduct, which we have developed for our employees and monitors here at Affiliated Monitors. And most importantly, all of our monitors are submitted to you for review and approval before they are engaged for a particular case, because we want to make sure that the board is completely comfortable with the person we have chosen. Frequency and reporting in monitoring situations. We issue detailed written reports of the results of all of our practice monitoring activities. We've found that monitoring is usually done quarterly and reporting is usually done at the same frequency. We can do it more frequently if it's absolutely necessary, but quarterly reporting, we found, provides the licensee with a reasonable opportunity to make recommended changes before the next round of monitoring begins. And they can do that without compromising public protection. Our reports explain how the monitoring was conducted, and we provide both a detailed description of our findings and, wherever possible, a set of specific concrete recommendations for improvement in the licensee's practice where that's appropriate. In a situation where we detect any problem or practice which poses an immediate threat to patient health and safety, we will notify you immediately. We don't wait on those situations at all. We also have found that in recent years, it has been helpful for us to provide an opportunity for a follow-up consultation directly between our monitor and the licensee regarding the results of a review once that review has been completed. That gives the licensee an opportunity to ask questions about the findings and to explore directly with the monitor recommendations for improvement in the practice. In our system, the licensee being monitored pays for all of their monitoring services. There is no cost to your board for any of those services. We have been in business for 19 plus years. We'll celebrate our 20th anniversary in January, as a matter of fact. And in all that time, we have never charged any professional licensing board a dime for any of the work that we do. All the work is paid for by the licensee. The cost of any particular monitoring program is going to depend on the number of factors. First, it's going to depend on who the monitor is. The cost of a monitor in a unique specialty area is naturally higher than it would be for a general practitioner. Our hourly rates for monitors in specific professions, including chiropractic, are based on a comparison of median salary levels provided by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. And we can provide advance estimates of program costs once we know what the scope of the monitoring program is. And the scope of the monitoring program is obviously an important factor in figuring all of this out as well. How often do the does the monitoring need to be done? How often do the reports need to be submitted to the board? And if we're looking at patient treatment records, how many records are we looking at per review? As I said earlier, we've found that that it works best when we have about 10 to 20 records per quarter per review. Keys to success, just a few that I want to mention to you. First, identify the issues that are to be addressed by the monitor as specifically as you possibly can. We know that defense counsel sometimes likes to push back on that and try and keep the issues about that are reflected in the public record vague. But it helps us, even if you have to do it outside of the terms of the order itself, to be as specific with us as you possibly can be about what you want the monitor to evaluate. As I said, afford the licensee adequate opportunity to improve. Quarterly reviews we find really do work very, very well. One thing you want to keep in mind regarding the monitor, a couple of things to mention. The monitor is not a mentor. They're not a supervisor. If you are in a situation where your case reasonably requires somebody to be watching day to day over the shoulder of a particular licensee, that's beyond the scope of what we were able to provide for you. We can't send somebody in to serve as a day-to-day supervisor for somebody. The other piece to keep in mind is that the monitor does not function as an extension of your investigative staff. Our work depends on being able to preserve both board confidence and licensee confidence in the impartiality of that monitor. The monitor may, during the course of a particular assignment, discover additional violations, and we will make you aware of those. But we do not go out and seek that, and we don't ask our monitors to serve as an extension of your investigative staff. Last, set reasonable sample sizes for your record reviews. As I said, 10 to 20 records per quarter is generally a very good number. It's also ideal to try and create incentives for compliance. If you can build your disciplinary order or consent agreement with terms that afford the licensee an opportunity to be relieved of the monitoring requirements at an earlier stage if they make satisfactory progress, we've found that often works very well in terms of providing that licensee with an incentive to comply. And take timing delays into account in your planning. Please remember that if you execute a consent order with a licensee and you ask them to be monitored by us, we may require 30 days or so to be able to identify a monitor and secure their approval, get the necessary contracts in place, and get the program set up. So you might not see that first quarterly report until perhaps the beginning of the 4th month of the probationary period, because of the time required for that, for sample selection, for review of the records, and for preparation and submission of the report to you. Last, we want you to consider the idea of using external resources for this function, because we think it gives you a better chance to get the kind of skill set you need. We do not ask that affiliated monitors be the sole provider of those services. We just want to be sure that we're on your resource list in case somebody needs the services we're able to provide. I think you asked me to keep my presentation to no more than a half an hour, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to ask any questions you might have.
Thanks, Jim. Any questions? I think your presentation is pretty holistic and pretty clear. Thank you.
We'll be happy to provide you with some sample copies of monitoring reports we have done if the board would be interested, so that you can see essentially a sample of what we produce for our licensees, because that may be helpful to you.
I think we've already received that or something similar.
Okay, I know we had done some previous report for you and some previous reports for you in some other cases at an earlier stage. I think the last one was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah, quite a bit ago.
But we have some additional materials we can send to you if you want to receive them.
Well, thank you so much. We'll let you know about that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity. Hope you're enjoying a nice day out there in Oregon, because I had the pleasure of visiting Portland not long ago, only about a month or so ago, and we really loved it out there. So had a
Well,
great time.
Take care.
Thank you very much, everybody.
All right. So agenda item number 8. Okay, so we have, we have the ORS and the OAR for reciprocity.
Yes, so this is coming, and actually that email registration to for piece 2. And I don't really remember the discussion around.
Let me pull up the documents because I know it was important,
Yeah.
and we talked about it, but that was
There's a lot of
a while ago. Yeah, I know we wanted to look at all of them together. It may be beneficial for you to pull up the email you sent me, because I think you told me well, actually, no, you sent it to me in Teams in our channel. I think that would be probably clearer, because I didn't include that in our packet.
Yeah, I think this is around whether the board would be interested. Partly, we wanted to include the statute, so we knew what we were statutorily required to do with regard to responsibility, but also if the board, under the governor and legislative push for ease of licensure, to have a full review of our reciprocity rules to see if any changes could be made to ease the requirements of licensure. So that's why we're.
So we're looking at ORS 684 to see what the statute says, you know, what we can and can't do, and then we can
Look at this.
decide if we want to change the OAR.
So there are 2 statutes on point. So there's 684-060 and 684-100.
Sure. Would you like to see 684-100 or 684-060 first?
And this is 060 first. So what looks like what's discretionary to the board is the essentially reviewing the qualifications. They don't need to take the exam as long as they pay the fee, but also whether the number of years of practice in another state is also within the discretion of the board. To make it like a senior status. No, this is just as a whatever license they want to come in with. Okay, yeah. Because if you're gonna go to 6 people.
Do you know, is this is this preventing? Or do you know of members of licensees prevented from even living here and working because they have to go through the process of testing? I mean, I think based on the DC list, like our numbers was 100 less chiropractor, you can say, was it a year ago, something like that?
I haven't seen anything like that. I mean, I have questions, but I haven't been in a while. Heather's been doing a lot of the DC applications right now, and so, but I haven't seen where somebody's like, I'd like to get the most property instead of going through the whole process.
Heather, have you seen anybody complaining about years of being in practice in a different jurisdiction, that being involved?
Not really. I mean, most of them have, are you talking about like part four? Or, I'm not having to take state. They'll, like the state exams. Oh, yeah, they'll complain about it, but I mean, that's the rule. So, I mean. It's just, they'll, like, I took the exam over in the state, why can't I just come over kind of thing, but it's few and far between that we even have somebody coming in from out of state, so.
And I think some people will complain about having to do the OGI and the minor certificate, because that's not something that's required of other states. In our state, that's required. So if somebody came in with trying to do reciprocity.
The only thing, like, from what I know, like, the reciprocity is like on the part 3 and part 4 or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only thing that they can, like, bag out of, kind of, but, that's, I mean, most of them have that anyway, so. And if they've been in practice for X number of years or whatever, and they don't have it, then they can use the reciprocity, but I don't know if I've had one come through that didn't have it already done, so, the NBC, so.
So this is the grounds for discipline. I'm not sure it was.
I put the whole thing in there because I wasn't sure exactly what you wanted to look at, so we can just scroll down until you see a section you want to look at.
Would it be R,
There.
suspension or revocation of another state or license? I don't know if that's what you guys.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So let's actually just move on to the rule.
I got you. Are you looking at annual, or you want to look at reciprocity, correct?
These 5 years. Is there anything in this rule that the board of appeals needs to be more lenient or that needs in process or streamlined in any way?
Let's get kind of, I'm playing devil's advocate, but what's the point of, being at least 5 years? They have to really. Practice and understand these. Like if I get my license in Washington. I practice in Washington, and I'm like, oh, I wanted to open an office in Portland. Go across the bridge, you have to wait 5 years or.
Well, it's to apply for reciprocity, so,
To opt out of the different testing, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. And so that testing is the equivalent of 5 years of practicing in some other state.
Well, that's what the board is,
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially.
Yeah.
It's really rare to find somebody nowadays that doesn't have that, and it means that the part 4, it's a little bit lower for the nation, maybe two, you know, a lot of DCs that came from out of state that. Like in California, they didn't have that part 4, I think at that time, it wasn't required for chiropractors to license with that. Particular test, and so sometimes they come in, well, I restrict that. It's still based on that rule of the 1982 We don't make them do it.
I think they had their own state test, like some states have this for their own, so. And it's really well applied for, like when I was learning.
Does chiropractic have any sort of national push? I know some licenses have a push to, yes.
Yes, but they're.
So I wondered
right now.
the impact of that in this.
So right now, the FCLB, they've been in discussions with multiple jurisdictions around whether states would be interested in intercity. And because Oregon has such a broad scope of practice, my concern, what I've raised consistently with these discussions, and a couple of other states as well, in the national meeting, has been, concern about that, that broader scope, having folks come in who are not trained within that broader scope. And also the post-Dobbs decision and how that affects folks who do OB/GYN and who may have other issues around women's healthcare. So other states. And so how you can bring those states that are so non-aligned to current Oregon law, and us be okay with being an interstate compactor. So we raised all these issues with FCLB, they went, oh, right, we didn't think about that. And so now it's kind of on hold, but they're gonna come back. It's gonna be a continued discussion, as it is, I think, with massage therapists, with PT, with dental. It is a kind of a national push. And then one question that came up in that meeting at FCLB was, who is promoting, what is the entity promoting these interstate governments? The Council of State Governments, which is actually a highly conservative funded entity. Meaning that anyway, I'll just leave it there. And that's where the funding comes from.
Yes, some of that is Department of Defense supported, right, so basically it's government.
Yeah. So it's really a follow the money and who's promoting these things. And it's very much similar to the right to work push. The deregulation of professional licensures and regulatory bodies. It's very good. So that's very relevant of where this is coming from. Now, as far as our governor's inquiry to all the governors as to allowing a more streamlined licensure for ease and access to folks who have been traditionally excluded from licensure, that's a separate issue. They kind of go hand in hand. So, but that's what this comes from is that the governor's inquiry is to all the boards as to, can you review your regs and statutes and see if there's any impediment to licensure that's unnecessary. And if you're not seeing anything, we can say, nope, we checked, we reviewed it, it's reasonable. Because I mean, to give you some idea, some boards still have within their rules that English is required for taking their exams, and they have all sorts of really blatant. Okay. And we took those out of the long term.
Does it exist anywhere else outside of the rule? Does it exist in documentation, in NBCE? Because that's who hosts the exams.
I know that, well, I don't know, from what I understand, is that if a test taker needs some kind of accommodation, then they request it from NBCE and that accommodation is. So if you're good with this rule, let's look at the annual registration. So no changes for reciprocity?
Yes, 5 years isn't enough. Yes.
I'm not seeing any relevance to the personals here. So I'm just-
Just talking.
No,
it's not an emergency.
You're just supposed to be at home reading that.
So we don't have, what the. It's like we don't have day passes. We grab some dogs.
Well, I think this came with that question, are we, is this process that we go forward with? As streamlined as it would have it, do we need to change this in any way to facilitate ease of licensure without putting at risk quality?
I think mine's the only one with the inactive license piece that could, like that, 9C, but that's a very, very, very specific case, and we'd probably look at multiple rules to determine what to do.
And I think in that situation, we just require them to take it.
We've done a pretty good job over the years of making sure that we're not putting a lot of blocks in people's way.
You know, what's astonishing right now is that there are some of the smaller boards that are still doing paper. Patients, and so it's just, at least in that way, we're a little bit step forward than the big role. So.
But we will be way beyond that soon.
So if we don't see any changes needed. Then we can move forward. Thank you for your patience. It's just, I need to make sure that we have a full look at all of them.
Alright, we're gonna do the,
Why don't we? I know Mackenzie was thinking that we need a little bit more review time, but Michelle, remembers.
Oh, good.
so I brought this forward.
Okay.
Yes. I brought the continuing education thing forward because, last fall I participated, with Part 4 boards at Western States. And the guy that runs it, who's in charge of, recruiting the chiropractors, he said that they've been having a lot of trouble getting chiropractors to participate, because the cap is at 6 hours. So,
I had somebody say that to me too, actually, at one of the tests.
yeah, so we spend an hour and a half to 2 hours on Friday night, being educated, basically like on how the test runs, but it also covers a lot of like cultural competency kinds of things, which he was like, do you think that maybe, and I'm like, well, that piece, I don't know, but the continuing ed part, I might be able to move along, but, so, and then, at Western States, we had one day, but it's 3 sessions, so you're there for 12 to 13 hours. And you're running through, there's, 25 candidates, I think, at each one, so. You know, you have to have knowledge about your station and stuff. When I've done it in Southern California, we run 6 sessions, that's 2 days at 12 hours a day. So I'm just thought I'd throw it out there. I mean, we're spending 14, 15 hours at the site for up here anyway. It seems like they don't usually have more than 1 day. So just throwing it out there and see if we want to make any kind of change.
Well, so when I brought it up the last time, the answer really was, well, that's just how we do it. Like, it's just 6 hours, that's what's in.
We're a new board.
I think it's worth exploring.
Can we like add language like with exception and like still have it be a part of this section, but just have that one section be an exception to the rule and then they submit it for approval? I don't know. I know we've kind of stepped away from that, but
So can I look at the rule a little bit fuller, because we have in that 8 section, that's
Right.
all of those things that are 6 hours.
yes. So what would you like to scroll up, down?
Let's go up and then down.
Up and down. Okay, we can do that.
See courses if they go down.
I mean, the other thing I want to say about it too, so, you know, it says participation in the examination or test writing committee. Those are a lot more too. You know, I've done those. And that is, and you are reviewing cases, you're coming up with new ones, it's a lot.
So we could make a new 9 that pulls out the 8. And whatever it is for the 18, yeah, 18. And make 8D into 2 separate, so NBC.
That would make a lot of people happy.
Is the test writing committee like multiple days?
It's a day and a half. Let's see, well, you know, they send you the little form that you. I mean, it's like, it's an 8-hour day and a 4-hour day.
So because before you do all that,
Yeah.
you're looking at a new 9 right there.
Yeah, realize.
Where would be,
Because at least, I mean, you have to have 25 docs in the rooms plus like 4 floaters to be able to break people. So you're looking for 29 doctors to make these things run.
so how many hours, let's separate the examination and then the test writing
Okay.
committee. So like 9A would be exam, 9B would be test writing.
Okay,
It's just-
so do we want 9 just to say the board may approve and then have A and B?
Yeah.
Okay,
Kind of like what we did it up at 8.
that's, I think I was trying to mirror that, but I wanted to.
So the letter that I have for the most recent test committee that I did says 9 hours. And then just contact your state board to see if it's accepted.
So after examination, then test writing is B.
I think, isn't that right? The test writing committees would be separate.
Yeah.
And but they're NBC test writing.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like.
Those hours fluctuate. Sometimes it could be more, sometimes it could be less.
You want to say some.
I know, I think they're all
equivalent.
That's like 1 day and a half days. I mean, it may be an hour or 2, or I think it's all around that.
Yeah, because I would, in my opinion, it was dependent on the number of hours per test. That's how you look at, to
Yeah,
be fair.
Like you just accept it at face value,
Yeah.
what they
They say,
say.
Yeah. that way, you're getting what you actually put in,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you have to travel for it too.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you're taking. But there's the committee days, but there's the days of board travel, that day. So you can always have the practice.
Just
To me.
because. I don't know.
Because you do a lot more.
You do.
It's not just, yeah, you're, like, the fact that it's specific, like, you come in and say,
I remember I did.
well, this was a part of that.
And if something were to change, our rules would change, like all of them would change.
Yeah.
Okay, let's leave that. Let's go to examination. I'd say semicolon after examination for NBC test writing. Now I'm gonna put forward, if we have a test writing committee internally, a subcommittee, a test writing review of NBC tests. So if we have minor surgery review, if we have, you know, what we done review, which we need to do, the CA. So is that also part of it?
What does that cover? Not working on it. I wanna go for something about a committee.
Oh, board.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, or on, yeah, or on the state.
Scroll to 8.
Mhm.
Yeah. And but that's still 6 hours.
Yeah.
So are we still good with 6 hours for test writing period for us?
Yeah.
Okay. So that must be done again. How many hours do you think for part 4 participation?
Sounds like 12, maybe 12 in the minute.
Yeah.
One thing you can think about is if you're active, DC, just regular active. And participating that 17 hours is your journal seating. And that would include one of the years of like 4 to 6 hours of the basic life support, no. You have a leftover of which. You know, like to do the basic life support.
Plus cultural competencies, yeah.
Yeah, I think 12. You know, just doubling it, I think that would be really good.
I'd be good with that, because I wouldn't necessarily want somebody to only get their credits from this. Yeah, I'd still want them to like take some kind of course.
Right, so you, would you say a maximum of 12?
Yeah,
Yeah, 15 to 12 months.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good solution.
At least I did us.
Well, just like a certificate, because you participated for this many hours.
So they can change it.
No,
when
I think they send it as a PDF or something, yeah.
Alright, I don't mind me calling out orders. I have 2 steak salad bowls here, one with no tomato.
Mine.
Okay. Thank you. Like that's the apparent difference. Yeah.
So people what's before the meeting is, that's we want, whether we want to bring this video. Just for one day. Yeah, we could.
Yeah, I think that's good.
So when are we gonna take a break? I mean, how long?
And have the barbecue.
Let's take a look at
salad.
Yeah, we're gonna take a 15-minute break, Seth. We'll be back soon.